That's amazing from all over the world.
Yeah, it's okay. The whole international,
Hello.
whole international group here.
Can anybody capture a screenshot of this?
We
Y'all
should.
turn on our video and put our hands up.
Uh,
People are doing it. Here comes a screenshot.
okay, okay.
Everybody,
Hare Krishna.
Come on, videos.
come on video and raise your hands and smile.
Anandini, would you like to lead Jaya Radha
Everybody
Madhava?
grab a screenshot.
Nandini from Switzerland.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anandini and family.
Hare Krishna.
Anybody's played this
Hare
before, but
Krishna.
I'm thinking, here comes the Sangha.
Here comes the Sangha. Precisely.
Gaat dat spelen? Ja, zo mooi. Dat is de kreukenboy, sowieso. Noah.
Jai Shri Prabhupada. Thank you, Anandini and family from Switzerland.
Yes, thank you.
Hare Krishna. Okay.
I was actually going to share the verse on the screen if we think it's a good idea. No,
Yeah, no, it's good. It's easy.
it's good.
So we have 49 people online.
49?
Yeah. And we have 12 here. How much is that?
60. 60.
Jai Hare Krishna. Jai.
Online it's more because so many people are more people at one computer.
That's a fact. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's way more.
Let's see.
Did you check?
No, I forgot that part.
I can do it for you.
Yes, and some people were here and left already.
That's-
So they were here and then now they're gone.
Here too.
Okay. 50 people in here is good. Huh? So many sincere souls. So many sincere souls. Okay. All right. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Nayanam namaskricha naram chaiva namotamam devim sarasvatim vyasam tato jayamudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of God and Narayan, to Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. So we're reading a book called Srimad Bhagavatam, and it was compiled, written about 5,000 years ago. We're on Canto 2, Chapter 7, entitled Scheduled Incarnations with Specific Functions. We're on text 53, and if I did it correctly, it's on the screen. So we'll start with the Sanskrit words. Mayam Varnayato Mushya Ishvarasyanumodata Vinvata Shradhaya Nityam Mayayatma Na Muyati Mayam Varnayato Musha Ishvarasyanumodata Shinvata Shradhaya Nityam Mayayatma Namuyati Mayam Varnayato Musha Ishvarasyanumodata Srinvata Shradhaya Nityam Mayayatma Namuyati Mayam Varnayato Musha Ishvarasyanumodata Srinvata Shradhaya Nityam Mayayatma Namuyati
Mayam Varnayato Musha
Ishvarasyanumodata Srinvata Shradhaya Nityam Mayayatma Namuyati
Mayam Varnayato Musya
Mayam Varnayato Musha
Ishvarasyanumodata
Ishvarasya namo tatam. Shrinvata shradhaya nityam. Mayayatma namuyati. Would anyone online like to chant? Okay, we'll go to the word for word. This is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 7, Text 53. Mayam, affairs of the external energy. Varnayata, while describing. Amusha, of the Lord. Ishvarasya, of the personality of Godhead. Anumodata, thus appearing. Shrinvata, thus hearing. Shradhaya, with devotion. Nityam, regularly. Mayaya, by the illusory energy. Atma, the living entity. Na, never. Muyati, becomes illusion. Hare Krishna. Hari Bol, spirit, soul. Okay, so the translation is, the Lord's activities in association with his different energies should be described, appreciated, and heard in accordance with the teachings of the Supreme Lord. If this is done regularly with devotion and respect, one is sure to get out of the illusory energy of the Lord. So the idea there is like, if we're a little awake, we should go, yeah, getting out of the illusory energy. That should be attractive. If I'm a little awake. Now, in Srila Prabhupada's purport, he writes, the science of learning a subject matter seriously is different from the sentiments of fanatics. Fanatics or fools may consider the Lord's activities in relation with the external energy to be useless for them, and they may falsely claim to be higher participants in the internal energy of the Lord. But factually, the Lord's activities in relation with the external energy and the internal energy are equally good. On the other hand, those who are not completely free from the clutches of the Lord's external energy should devoutly hear regularly about the activities of the Lord in relation with the external energy. They should not foolishly jump up to the activities of the internal energy, falsely attracted by the Lord's internal potential activities like his Rasa Lila. The cheap reciters of the Bhagavatam are very much enthusiastic about the Lord's internal potential activities, and the pseudo-devotees, absorbed in material sense enjoyment, falsely jump to the stage of liberated souls and thus fall down deeply into the clutches of external energy. Some of them think that to hear about the pastimes of the Lord means to hear about his activities with the gopis or about his pastimes like lifting the Govardhan hill, and they have nothing to do with the Lord's plenary expansions as the Purusha avatars and their pastimes of the creation, maintenance, or annihilation of the material worlds. But a pure devotee knows that there is no difference between the pastimes of the Lord either in Rasa Lila or in creation, maintenance, or destruction of the material world. Rather, the descriptions of such activities of the Lord as the Purusha avatars are specifically meant for persons who are in the clutches of the external energy. Topics like the Rasa Lila are meant for the liberated souls and not for the conditioned souls. The conditioned souls, therefore, must hear with appreciation and devotion the Lord's pastimes in relationship with the external energy, and such acts are as good as the hearing of Rasa Lila in the liberated stage. A conditioned soul should not imitate the activities of liberated souls. Lord Sri Chaitanya never indulged in hearing the Rasa Lila with ordinary men. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, the science of God, the first 9 cantos prepare the ground for hearing the 10th canto. This will be further explained in the last chapter of this canto. In the 3rd canto, it will be more explicit. A pure devotee of the Lord, therefore, must begin reading or hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from the very beginning and not from the 10th canto. We have several times been requested by some so-called devotees to take up the 10th canto immediately, but we have refrained from such an action because we wish to present Srimad Bhagavatam as the science of Godhead and not as a sensuous understanding for the conditioned souls. This is forbidden by such authorities as Sri Brahmaji. By reading and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam as a scientific presentation, the conditioned souls will gradually be promoted to the higher status of transcendental knowledge after being freed from the illusory energy based on sense enjoyment. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 2nd canto, 7th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam entitled Scheduled Incarnations with Specific Functions. Thank you for hearing Srila Prabhupada's purport. Om Ganatimirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshud Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavams Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaraganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitams Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshware Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatayubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva Cha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Mayam Varna Yato Mosha Ishvarasya Numodata Srinvata Shradhaya Nityam Mayayatma Namuyati. The Lord's activities in association with his different energies should be described, appreciated, and heard in accordance with the teachings of the Supreme Lord. If this is done regularly with devotion and respect, one is sure to get out of the illusory energy of the Lord. Hare Krishna. Okay, so reading Srila Prabhupada's purport, two words stand out. He uses them multiple times. And one is fanatic, and the other is science, scientific, scientist. So those are the two words. And so, so Prabhupada emphasizes that this process of bhakti yoga, Krishna consciousness, it's the science of learning a subject matter seriously is different from the sentiment of fanatics. So that goes for any subject matter. And Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, of all sciences, I am the science of the self. I mean, there's many sciences, crafts, arts we can learn, and it's part of human endeavor to learn, to learn so many science, arts, like that. And the most important science is the science of the self, science of self-realization. Prabhupada often uses that. We use it a lot in Safatov. Like if we have a string of zeros, what's it worth? The value is 0, 100 zeros, million zeros. We put the 1 in front. So the 1 is self-realization. Otherwise, if we gain the world and we're lost to ourselves, the experience is empty and desperate. Okay? So that's the most important science, and all other sciences are meant to serve that. And so reading about fanatics here, that was described in the Bhagavad Gita. Sanjaya, who's actually the speaker, Krishna is the speaker of Bhagavad Gita, and the conversation between Arjuna and Krishna, it's narrated by Sanjaya. Sanjaya is seeing the scene on the battlefield by what Prabhupada calls mystic television. Mystic television. So Sanjaya at the end of Bhagavad Gita goes, I'm experiencing a thrill at every moment, witnessing Krishna and Arjuna and this transcendental conversation. Thrill at every moment. So Krishna, this process of bhakti yoga, it's a thrill at every moment. It's not about cheap thrills. Okay? Make that distinction. So it's not about going for some cheap thrills. It is about, well, in a lot of recent presentations, we've made this distinction relationship between states of consciousness and stages of consciousness. So that this is a process, it's a process through which we, we need to put on mute here. There we go. Good. Okay. Yes, through which we progress, and it requires effort, dritavrataha, determination. Again, just like to advance in any field, to advance, if we want to become really excellent expert, requires study and effort. And so this is Prabhupada uses these in many of these verses that we're reading here. Prabhupada, one of his books is The Science of Self-Realization. So science means there's philosophy or a hypothesis that is rational. Prabhupada really likes the term rational theism, because the idea is, oh, if you're a theist, you believe in God, that means you're not rational. I'm a man of reason. So rational theism. So science means a logical, rational philosophy and transformation. You can say experience, experiment, but really it means transformation. Transformation. That, because someone say, what do you believe? What do you believe? Kind of like, who cares? Who cares? That whatever it is you're believing, or even we can even care less about what group do you belong to? What card are you holding? Like, who cares really? Okay, so we're not interested in sectarianism. And so transformation, what process are you practicing, and what's the results? What's your realization? What's the qualities of your heart? What's the qualities of your heart? Right, so this process of bhakti yoga, it's not about becoming God. It is a process for becoming godly. It is a process for becoming godly. And so, yeah, back more than 40 years ago, in the early 70s, when I was just 2 or 3 years, in the late 70s, when I was just 2 or 3 years old. Let's see, if I do the math, so in the late 70s, so I was not even 20 years old yet. No, what we say, just to be precise with our language, means like this body, okay, so, and that's perhaps the key thing we get from Srila Prabhupada by this rational theism. So I was exposed to like a transformational process, human potential movement, seminars, different like that. And there was power there. And then as I started reading Prabhupada's books, which was at 19 years old, 1980, Not that I was serious or something, but I started reading Prabhupada's books. And then I was getting a comprehensive philosophical framework for a complete understanding of this transformational process. And so science means philosophy, because like in the secular human potential seminars, yeah, there's something powerful there. At the same time, what is it that's transforming? No clear answer. Stance of 100% personal responsibility. That's, yeah, I like that. Okay. Yeah, that we're 100%, I'm 100% responsible for the experience in my life, for the results in my life. Okay, now how's that work? How's that, is it just like starting at a particular point, we're 100% responsible for our life, but it's just random chance that this one takes birth in poverty and sickness, and this one takes birth in affluence, and this one takes birth as a tiger or a dog, or a dog on the streets of Calcutta, and yeah. So and then I'm hearing this philosophy, the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's like the follow-up book to Bhagavad Gita. It's actually in 30 volumes. And so in this philosophy, I got answers to those questions. And you know, we're probably familiar with, like, okay, the idea of religion without philosophy is at best sentimental. Worse, it's fanaticism. It could go to terrorism, different things like that, right? And then naturally, people who value intellectual process aren't going to be satisfied with that. And we probably all had experience that, okay, and let's say you got something going on in the name of philosophy, maybe many or most university courses in philosophy. Okay, it can be very interesting, this, that. And then, okay, we can analyze this psychologist, philosopher. What difference is it actually making as far as transforming lives? Doesn't mean philosophy is useless, but philosophy without the one in front of the zeros, then it can be an experience of emptiness. So in my early adulthood, I was quite enlivened and feeling fortunate to find this complete, beautiful, synergistic integration of rigorous philosophy that no other philosophical system can compare to. Not that you need to trust David Wolf about that. Study as much as you want, apply your intelligence. That's what I endeavor to do, as limited as my intelligence is. And I tried hard, I still do, to find flaws in the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. And my deepest questions are answered. And it's not just a philosophy. And here's a process, here's a transformational process that we can give ourselves to whatever extent we choose, to experience the truths asserted by the philosophy. So what is a more sublime life purpose than that? Than to give ourselves to that process. Okay, so by conventional accounting, the body is 60 years old. You're a bit too enthusiastic with that. Yeah, 60. That's not 40. Technically speaking, the body's not even a few moments old. Let's just if we get precise here, because this is a philosophical class. Technically speaking. Right? Because we know from chemistry, science, the body changes at every moment. We don't have the exact same body we had 2 hours ago. Right? It's changing at every moment. Okay, but at least the form basically appears that way. And so Yeah, so, okay. So the idea on such days is to look at, okay, what are we looking for? What are we wanting? What's my desire, hope, wish, intention for the next year? Right, since there's like the whole first digit change, so the next decade. So my wish, hope, intention. My wish, hope, intention is that I give myself more seriously to this life purpose of self-realization and devotional connection with the divine, with Krishna, than I did last year and last decade. That let this next decade, let my service to Srila Prabhupada's mission be much greater than it's been for any decade till now. And so that's my hope. Of course, there is no hope. There's only you. But
I was about to say.
you're about to say that, yeah. So that's, yeah. Well, I'd like my determination to be in that. So Srila Prabhupada, he's distinguishing fanatics and spiritual scientists. So we get to be a spiritual scientist. That's exciting. That's exciting. And part it's a scientific process, just like in any scientific experiment. We carefully arrange the set and setting. Of course, a wonderful thing here is that even if we don't arrange the set and setting perfectly, Nea Bikramo Nashosti, Pratyavayana Vijite Swapamapyasa Dharmasya Traite Mato Baya. That still, even we're 1% sincere, then that's for the eternal benefit of the soul. Eternal benefit in terms of transformation of consciousness, cleansing of the diamond. And so Prabhupada, so a term we use in Safato, different programs, is spiritual bypass, artificial transcendence. So Prabhupada's cautioning against the spiritual bypass there. He's referring to something specific. We might not go into too much detail right now, but spiritual bypass means not rigorously following the process and pretending that we're more spiritual advanced than we are. An example we give of spiritual bypass sometimes is like, let's say if something apparently unfortunate happens. So I immediately say, I know that's God's plan for me. Wow, you're so realized. You're like a saint. I know that's God's. Okay, now maybe it is God's plan for me. I mean, we can look at that. But the idea is, okay, am I jumping to, I know that's God's plan for me, at the expense of courageous introspection and looking at what was it about me that created or co-created that situation? Am I jumping to, that's God's plan for me, while harboring resentment, hatred, envy, jealousy, depression that I'm not willing to admit to because I'm doing a spiritual bypass? Okay. Whereas, sure, in the context of endeavoring to see how come I may have less than consciously co-created that with higher powers, with God, looking at, yes, what were my desires for adoration, for distinction, what for complacency, what were my agendas, shadow agendas that set me up to get exploited, right? Because if we have no shadow agendas, then we're invincible. Then we're invincible. Yeah, but what if, what if pandemic? No, we're invincible. We're unstoppable. That's security. That's happiness. As I shared recently, in an early Back to Godhead article, 1944 actually. In a 1944 Back to Godhead article, Prabhupada was looking at the philosophy. He was examining the philosophy of theosophy. theosophists, Madame Blavatsky and that sort of thing. And he quoted them, one of their articles, saying, like, I'm paraphrasing, but essentially, we will not rest peacefully at night until the weak are not oppressed by the strong and things like that. So Prabhupada said, this is a very nice sentiment, to want to protect the weak. He said, but here in Bhakti Yoga, Krishna consciousness, our approach is kind of different. Our approach is not about preventing the strong to oppress the weak. Our approach is to make everyone so strong that they won't be oppressed. Yeah. Different, and like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah. Otherwise, just like, I will rescue you. Yeah, and we can rescue in the sense of Savai Pumsam Paroda Moyato Bhakti Toxiji. I took your Bhakti Yayat Masa Prasidati. That, because the root cause of all anxiety, the root cause of all security, and this should be interesting for people because we're all struggling with anxiety, sometimes slight, sometimes like tormented. The root cause of all anxiety is misidentification of the eternal spirit self with material body, spirit and matter. So supporting each other to be strong means realizing who I am as a spirit soul and realizing what are the natural activities of the spirit soul, and that's service and devotion to the Supreme. And if that's my only desire, to self-realize and to increase my devotional service, whatever the material context does, whatever tidal waves, hurricanes, whatever mean and nasty people, whatever brutal dictators, terrible pandemics, every moment there's an inspiring opportunity for self-realization and for the self to turn towards the super consciousness in a spirit of loving devotion. So if that's my goal, I'm always successful. If I got some other agendas going on, then I'm coming from a greedy place, a lusty place, an envious place, an angry and material anger place. There is spiritual anger. If I got some other agendas going on, then I am ripe. I am susceptible to be exploited by cheaters. Those cheaters, society of the cheaters and the cheated. Because for sure, within the material context, we can see we've all been victimized. Oftentimes more productive is to look at where am I and how have I perpetrated and victimized others due to my agendas. And then we're in that karmic cycle. Jivo, jivasya, jivanam. In the material consciousness, one living entity is food for another. Whereas this pure devotional service, that's win-win for all living entities. And that's our opportunity to move towards that in this human form of life. And part of the scientific process of self-realization given in Srimad Bhagavatam, of course, is chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Also, an integral part of the scientific process is doing just what we're doing now, studying Srimad Bhagavatam. And that's stressed, practically this verse mirrors a well-known verse earlier in the Bhagavatam, Nasta Prayashu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevya Bhagavat Yutamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. By that verse, the Bhagavatam says, by regular attendance in classes on the Srimad Bhagavatam. And that can tell, regular attendance in classes. Regular attendance in classes. I want to have some fun. So the idea that, so this Bhakti Yoga, it's not about not having fun. This is about like going for the real fun. By regular attendance in class on the, I can tell you, like, yeah, this morning I read Srimad Bhagavatam. Now I'm reading again. Life is successful.
Yes.
That's it. I chanted 60 rounds, read Bhagavatam. Life is successful. I mean, other things might flow from that, but that's complete. So the more we're regular in this process, chanting Hare Krishna, chanting the names of God. If someone doesn't prefer Hare Krishna, chanting any names of God, bona fide names of God, and hearing truly transcendental sound vibration, where each syllable conveys absolute truth and is non-different from the truth that it conveys. Then then we experience a thrill at every moment. And that comes from not going for cheap thrills. It comes from being willing to do the heavy lifting, the hard work of spiritual science. Systematically attending to Srimad Bhagavatam. This is my son Abhi. He's like 13 years ago. He was 14. So he was 14, and he was kind of coming out of the Nintendo phase, and he was getting into Bhagavatam. And I had, I'd been studying Prabhupada's books for more than 25 years at that time. But I came into his room once, and formerly he'd be listening to something like Pink Floyd or something. I don't know where he would have picked that up. All sorts of influences in this Kali Yuga. Dangerous. So dads need to protect. Anyhow. But anyhow, this time, so he was reading, he was on first volume of Bhagavatam, and he was in the preface, and he started talking to me, and he read this, and so Prabhupada writes in the preface, which is before every edition, every volume, that Prabhupada writes, it should be gone through chapter by chapter, one after another. The reading matter is so arranged with its original Sanskrit text, its English translation, synonyms, translation, and purport, so that one is sure to become a God-realized soul at the end of finishing the first 9 cantos. So Abhi, in each verse, he was reading the Sanskrit and the word for word, then the translation and purport. And I'd never systematically done that. I would read the translation and purport, and if there was something interesting in the Sanskrit, a verse I'd heard Prabhupada quote, maybe I want to learn, something I noted in the word for word, but I never went, but Abhi was taking that very seriously. It was like, well, no, Dad. Dad, he goes, no, it's just, when English translation, Sanskrit, English transliteration, synonyms, translation, and he goes, and then at the end of finishing the first, one's sure to become a God-realized soul. So since then, when I read Prabhupada's books, I do the Sanskrit, the synonyms, the word for word, like that. So, my son's certainly guiding me in spiritual life in so many ways. Let's see. Yes, and then, okay, then in this preface, I'll just close here. So Prabhupada writes in the preface, which appears before each volume, Prabhupada writes, I must admit my frailties in presenting Srimad Bhagavatam. So if Prabhupada's admitting his frailties, and I'm very proud of my qualities, so there's something off there. Like, yeah, how we can only hope to approach a drop of Prabhupada's humility. Prabhupada's admitting his frailties. I must admit my frailties in presenting Srimad Bhagavatam, but still I am hopeful of its good reception by the thinkers and leaders of society on the strength of the following statement of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 5, Text 11. Tat bhag visargo janata gaviplavo yasmin pratishlokam abad avat yapi namanyanantasya yashon kirtanayat shrivanti gayanti grinanti sadava. And the translation is, on the other hand, that literature which is full with descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, form, and pastimes of the unlimited Supreme Lord is a transcendental creation meant to bring about a revolution in the impious life of a misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even though irregularly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. Om Tat Sat, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. So the verse before that in the Bhagavatam, Narada Muni, he uses the term Vyasam Tirtam. Vyasam means crows. So again, this is about transformation. So Narada Muni is talking to his disciple Vyasadeva about crow-like literatures, because Vyasadeva, again, he didn't write some junky romance novels. He wrote the Rig Veda, right? He wrote the Upanishads. But Narada Muni is like Bayasam Tirtham. They're like pilgrimage places for crows. And then Narada Muni here, he's talking about literatures like Bhagavatam, which are, they're only interested in the self, turning towards itself and self-discovery and turning towards God in the spirit of devotion. Nothing auxiliary. These are like, these are swan-like. These are for the swan-like souls. So the idea is crows are attracted to filth, dead bodies, blood, gore, trash, garbage.
That's not true.
This is the imagery. And swans, they're attracted to places with beautiful places with lakes and saintly people. So again, all right, so looking at my hope for the next decade, of course, we don't know. We don't know how long the soul will stay in this body, which points not to depression, which points to let me get urgent. Padam yadvi padam notation. There's danger at every step in the material world. At every step, that should be more apparent in 2020 than in other times in our lifetime. There's danger at every step, right? So how prepared are we? How prepared are we to leave this body in perfection? So my hope, determination, but that might be giving myself too much credit, is that whatever crow-like attractions I'm holding on to, and there's a lot of crow-like attractions in this heart, that may that be practically destroyed. May that be practically eliminated, and let what I'm attracted to come towards complete swan-like attractions. That's my that's my wish. Okay, so Prabhupada makes the point here, like, again, not to jump. We can imagine Prabhupada wrote this before he wrote Krishna book, because Prabhupada did give the 10th canto, and that's the direct pastimes of Krishna, which are also there in the 3rd canto and other places. But the idea is, we can go anywhere if we're guided by the pure devotee, and we have a humble spirit, so we're fully encouraged to read Krishna book. I am so happy that Malini is leading a reading group for women on Krishna book. That is ecstatic, and it's all guided by Srila Prabhupada. And so it's like wherever we touch these literatures, it is sublime and transformational. You don't need to trust me. Chant Hare Krishna, read Prabhupada's books, notice the transformation. And at the same time, simultaneously, we're encouraged to read systematically. Prabhupada says reading or hearing systematically, starting from the beginning. Because by hearing about God's pastimes in relation with so-called material energies, we get purified of our material attachments. Srishti stiti pralaya sadhana shaktireka chayivayasi bhuvanani bibharti durga ichana upamapiyasya chachestatesa govinda mari pusham tamaham bhajami. That's talking about Kali. I see some Kali stretches right here. That's talking about Kali, Durga. Srishti stiti pralaya, which means creation, maintenance, and destruction. Srishti stiti pralaya sadhana shaktireka. That all of the processes of material nature, creation, maintenance, destruction. We can think of the universe. We think of this body, right? It's creation, maintenance, and then it goes to dwindling. I haven't experienced it like this body. This body is like it was at 16 years old, but at least philosophically, it's described that even these bodies, what to speak of the universal body, whose lifespan is more than 311 trillion years old, are subject to creation, maintenance, and destruction. And Durga Kali, she's controlling all that. she's the supreme demigod. She's controlling all that. Why? Govinda Mari Pusham Tamaham Bhajami, in service to Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. And so as we progress in the science of spiritual life, we realize God, we realize Krishna in the processes of material creation, maintenance, and destruction. And that comes from actually cultivating realization, and sharing with others. Brahma is speaking to Narada here, and then Narada continues the disciplic succession by sharing with others. He's known as the eternal spaceman. Is that a cool name? Is that a cool nickname or what? I mean, yeah. And so we get to participate in the parampara. We get to participate in the disciplic succession by rigorously cultivating the science, not giving in to propensities for fanaticism, and sharing. Thank you for your attention. I'll read the verse one more time, and then I'll be glad to hear realizations, inspirations, comments, questions. Mayam Barnayato Mosha Ishvarasya Numodata Srinbata Shradhaya Nityam Maya Yatma Namuyati. The Lord's activities in association with his different energies should be described, appreciated, and heard in accordance with the teachings of the Supreme Lord. If this is done regularly with devotion and respect, one is sure to get out of the illusory energy of the Lord. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Questions or comments? Okay, yeah, thank you. Yes, thank you. Sarah, yes, Sarah, question, comment.
Hare Krishna, we're talking about fanaticism, and recently I think I had a realization about like the distinction between fearfully clinging to spiritual practice versus, I don't know, cultivating a healthy attachment. And I'm curious how that relates to fanaticism, or just speaking more about that distinction, because it seems good to, like, if I'm going to fearfully cling to something, cling there, and also at some point it's not helpful.
Yes. Thank you. Thanks for sharing, you're asking. And thanks for sharing your experience. Yeah, so the nature of the soul is to be attached. And so it's a very vital point, because oftentimes in personal growth, spiritual approaches, just don't be attached. I mean, I say that, just don't be attached. Just don't, we hear it millions of times. Okay, just don't be attached. Okay, here's the thing. Our nature is to be attached. Well, we need to get rid of that. Great, but it's impossible. Our choice is where to direct our attachment. Our choice is where to direct our attachment. And we can direct it materially or spiritually. And the science, what's that mean, spiritual? That's the science we're talking about. Because oftentimes in the name of spiritual, it's actually material. That's kind of what's talked about.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we're gonna be attached, and are we going to direct that propensity materially or spiritually? To the extent that we direct our attachment propensity materially, then we'll continue to be insecure, because materially means I'm looking for some eternal, because the soul's always looking for eternal bliss, eternal peace, eternal fulfillment, eternal joy. And everything material is going to be smashed by time. And at some level, we know that. So we're going to be insecure, we're going to be in anxiety. And then so much of life is trying to numb that feeling of insecurity, anxiety, numb, escape from it, beach ball it, like that. And so the science of Bhakti Yoga is directing the propensity for attachment spiritually. Yeah. That Yehi samsparsha jamboga dukunai evite yantavanta conte nateshu mate Buddha, meaning that a wise person, to the extent we come to enlightenment, we're not interested in so-called pleasures or gratifications that have a beginning and an end, because we're eternal beings. And there is happiness that ever increases, fulfillment. And that's when we're attached to the service of the Supreme Personality of God, at service of God through God's pure devotees, such as Srila Prabhupada. That includes reading literature like this, hearing literature like this, chanting the names of God. Now, in directing our practice, in directing our propensity for attachment towards spiritual, that's nice. And then as we practice, we might find that we've got some material stuff mixed in, okay? Okay, so my greatest success in life is that I've developed some attachment to read Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's my success. I'll count myself. Now, I hope that increases 1,000,000 times. So that's spiritual attachment, right? That's spiritual attachment. Now, but maybe there's part of me, it's like, the one thing is like, yeah, I want you to get this transcendental knowledge. Yeah, but like, I hope you think I give a good class. I hope you'll think that I'm smart. I'm making all these points. Okay, so then that exactly. So then that's a material attachment brought into the attempt at the spiritual realm. And so as we progress, then those weeds, that dirt in the heart, will come up, and then we want to be like a swan. We made the swan crow distinction. We want to be like the swan. One quality of a swan is it can distinguish in a mixture of milk and water. It can pick out the milk. That's what I hear. I haven't observed swans, but Prabhupada says again and again, he gives that example. So we say, yes, okay, so this is actually a really healthy, eternal, spiritual attachment to rising early and chanting the names of Krishna, attachment to Srimad Bhagavatam. But now this is a weed, attachment to being appreciated and honored, and attachment to complacency. And so we want to give up those subtler and subtler attachments as we progress in pure and purer forms of spiritual life. Thank you, Sarah. Anandini.
I really think you gave a good class and that you're smart and intelligent.
Success. Thank you.
And I have a question. Like at the beginning, you were speaking about the body, how like it has a certain age. It has 60 years in your case, 40 years in my case. And the soul is eternal, like the soul has no age. So, and then you were saying the body changes all the time. And from my understanding, like all the cells are replaced within 7 years or so. So then the body cannot really get older than 7 years. So what is old age?
Yeah, thank you. Everybody can really get older than 7 years. Or even it can get older than 1 second. Because even though there might be some cells that were here a minute ago, a year ago, but not all the souls. It's a different body in some way. It's a different body in some way. And so old age, is it's an illusion. It's an illusion that we buy into. It's an illusion that we buy into because I identify with this temporary, illusory form of matter. I identify with this temporary, illusory form of matter. So for the soul, there's no old age. And then old age, it's like a way of speaking. Just like death, it's a way of speaking to help us understand, to come out of conditioned life. Just like, okay, I may be dreaming, and in the dream, I'm this person in the dream. I'm a king, I'm a queen, I'm a bird flying. And just like that person in the dream, or a similar analogy, we identify with the character in the virtual reality game, and the character's growing old, but really it's just these pixels, right? It's just these pixels, essentially. But because I identify, like, oh no, I'm dying, I'm growing old, I got this terrible disease. But the pixels, these are just different pixels in that metaphor. And so old age, death, disease, these are illusory states that relate to our dream that I am David Wolf. They're illusory states. And so like one stage of coming out of the illusion is realizing I'm spirit soul, at least intellectually. Yeah, but then realizing that, and Prabhupada makes this point, that even the body, it's just like, it's a way of speaking to help us grab onto some concepts. It's a way of speaking because we identify, I'm not this body, only the body gets old. But technically speaking, it's just, Krishna addresses this in the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, that even if you think this whole thing's just a mixture of chemicals, okay, so the mixture of chemicals change, and one change is called death, but it's just a mixture of chemicals. So what's to lament? What's to lament? Even if one doesn't accept the existence of the eternal soul, that okay, so some chemicals got rearranged. So it's an illusory construct, and we accept the construct of old age, death. We accept that construct to support ourselves in our process of enlightenment. Okay, thank you, Anandini. I see a question here.
Yeah. Hey, David, can you hear me okay?
Yes, Valerie.
Yes. So I love that I hopped on here this morning because so many things you've said have just been resonating with me. Oh my goodness. I've been like looking into this whole matter, energy never dies. So like you were saying, scientific. So my brain tends to want to go towards the scientific explanation, but I spiritually believe that, where our souls don't die, they go into another form. And in terms of like the age, I just love what you're saying there, because I've been experiencing that in my own life, in my generation. I just turned 32, and there's this whole societal, like you said, it's pressed upon us, the age. And I used to always say this to Leah, that her soul is so young. Like I could never, like, she was always on the same level as me, like I don't have a question, but I just wanted to share that I love your insight on age. And it just reaffirmed how I was feeling. And I'm, as always, everything's in God's hands. So it was obviously meant that I was supposed to be here this morning. So thank you, David.
Thank you, Valerie. I appreciate your sharing and your realizations related to soul, God consciousness, even something like our souls. C.S. Lewis said, we don't have a soul, we are a soul, we have a body. Mm-hmm. So even that can, like, my finger, my thoughts, my leg, but my soul, technically, no, I like that from C.S. Yeah, we don't have a soul, we are a soul. We have a body.
Exactly. And like, just I don't know, I've been feeling that a lot lately, and holding on to that mentality of, we are a soul, it's just the body, has really helped me to stop comparing myself to others. Like you see someone on the street and you're like, gosh, they have this, they have that, but at the end of the day, like you said, materials aren't gonna stick around, they'll degrade, they'll eventually die. And I don't know, I just find that really beautiful, that connecting with that has been able to help me love myself in a better light. So yeah.
Thank you, Valerie. I'm inspired by your sharing.
Thank you, David, and happy birthday.
Gajendra.
Yay! Wow, full house.
So, thank you. And I wanted just to express for the willingness cemented in for myself. One pearl I got from this morning's class, it's a big one for me. And what it's, is you brought up this idea of sort of like state of consciousness or stage of consciousness. And I had a understanding of that, a little more nebulous for a long, long time.
Yes.
And sometimes when something's just said with a few clear, right words, all of a sudden it can become really powerful. And so I've always sort of like, no, and there's like, stage and state, and there's a distinction between the stage, and the state of consciousness. But applying those words is really big for me this morning. And I just so happened to have a big meditation this morning coming from yesterday about someone in my life who played a powerful role. And they feel like they've done this like tremendous healing. Like they kind of feel like maybe they are, I can't really say, it's like a liberated soul and this and that. I have some reasons to question whether this is a permanent state of Brahmabhuta or whatever.
Yes.
I don't know. But it just became so helpful for me to like sort of stop my mental intellectual processing about it and just go like, oh, whatever the stage, they have a state of consciousness, and it's just really that simple. And then from there, I do look at, well, what is the meaning? Like, so a state of consciousness does relate very much to that, I am experiencing on a mental emotional state. Stage of consciousness for me definitely does connect to the Sat's eternal aspect. It definitely brings in maturity. Because someone can definitely have a state of consciousness of feeling liberated, but maybe on another level, they're not really going to have that consistent, eternal, because they have not got the maturity. Maybe they had a big breakthrough for this life, but that's different than a truly liberated state, if you're going to be like 9 cantos and beyond. So
Thank you, Gajendra.
It was really powerful.
I'm very moved to hear that. I'm glad some words I mentioned has you've moved you to realization. Yeah, stages means like, okay, apart from I had this amazing thing happen after I smoked something. You need to believe me, whatever. Or even after a kirtan or whatever. Like, okay, stage of consciousness means consistently. How does your spiritual life show up in your relationships? That stage of, how does your spiritual show up? How does your spiritual life show up consistently when you're alone in the dark? What's going on then? How does it show up in your day-to-day activities? And that's a reflection of stage. So a question here, let me see here. I'm not sure. Okay. Bhaktilata?
Can I respond to something just on that?
Sure.
There's a chapter about states and stages.
Yeah.
In a book called The Power of Bhakti that Dhira Govinda wrote, Power of Bhakti. Anyway, if anyone is listening and wants to get that book, we can give you it. There's a whole chapter on it.
Yes, there is.
And it's good. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Damayanti.
I want to add something to what you said, Govinda, about that, is because it seems to me that those states of consciousness also, they are kind of candies.
Candy.
Or like encouragement.
Yeah.
Or pat in the back. or gift. And of course, we don't want to identify with them and think like that's where I am at in my stage.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it seems useful in keeping us going.
Yes, yeah. So if we get a genuine state of consciousness, and it's like Krishna encouraging us to be more determined and enthusiastic to practice the science. So I progress in the stage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
confirmation also.
Confirmation that.
Confirmation that, oh, that does exist. I experienced it. I know it exists because I experienced it. And now I'm back to the grind. That's not where I am at. But at least I have the goal is set in a way that has more like cemented goal because I have experienced
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Melanie. Yeah, because I did experience some state, and then like maybe an unhealthy way to respond to that is like, oh, I just want that state again, but it's not there, so I'm depressed. So I can't even get out of bed in the morning, or like that. But like, oh yeah, I got God revealed some ecstatic state of consciousness. That may be more determined to practice the scientific process of spiritual.
Increasing size.
Thank you.
Thank you for your class. It was very enlightening. And I was about like something when you said that word about fanatics, and it relates to states of consciousness and stages, because I think maybe somebody who's beginning that kind of spiritual practice, there's such an amazing experience of joy and bliss, like you said, it kind of like candies to get you going. So it's like, oh, this is delicious, I'm gonna keep going. And then it's like, oh God, that's not where I'm at in my life. So but almost, I was thinking though, I was reflecting about fanatics, and I was thinking I totally went through a fanatical stage, and I feel like everyone I've talked to, it's like a fanatical stage.
Yeah.
I almost feel like it's necessary because it's like I'm obsessed with like being in that state of consciousness. I have to be washed in it all the time to almost like progress to the next stage, because it's like, if it's just a little candy here and there, it's like, oh, this is nice kirtan, all right, I'll come next year. Then it was like fanatical and almost like judging other people, like a little bit, like, oh, you should be kirtan, you should be doing that too. And then, but it's really just a reflection of like myself. I should be doing this, like, I should be coming to kirtan, I should be vegetarian, I don't know. And so it's like that fanatical stage usually can be a little bit like everyone else should be doing that. So I think that's what the biggest turnoff with fanatics is, that there's a little bit like, at least I get this experience, like there's some judgment, like, oh, I have to be that way too. But I think that's just a natural. I know that with my parents, they were super annoyed with me when I was going through the fanatical stage. I was like, did you offer that? And they're like, oh God. It's like, did you say the Prashad prayer before we were beginning to eat? It was just like, oh my God, please.
Yeah, I don't want my daughter telling me I'm in Maya.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I mean, it was deep because I felt like I had a taste for understanding this is the truth. So I think, but I'm grateful, and I think that like fanatical stage is necessary almost. And it allows us almost to move past to like a higher stage. And I think maybe there's always this balance between like being really strong with like convictions and commitments, and I'm gonna this vow, and then like letting it go a little bit, and it's okay, and finding that acceptance, and so
what's balance at different stages of life. And it's like a little seedling. Certainly it's going to become a strong redwood, and that not even a hurricane can touch it. But in the seedling stage, maybe some overprotection, which can look fanatical, can be helpful.
Exactly. It's a really nice analogy. And so I feel like for myself to not judge people who are in that fanatical stage, realizing it's a stage. And it's also a state in the sense it'll come, it'll go.
Yeah.
I mean, some people maybe get stuck there, but
Some people too bound and,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
okay.
But even in the ultimate, even if it seems like they're fanatic their entire lives, it's still just a stage. It's still just a stage. Like they'll move through it at some point.
And I think that you've come to maturity where you're seeing their co-creation with God reciprocating for that particular person at a particular stage.
Yes.
And you have empathy because you've experienced like that.
Yeah.
You have empathy for your parents.
Yeah. And sometimes I wish I had more of that fanatical part of me, if that makes sense. Like sometimes I'm at a stage in my spiritual life where I'm like, I'm a little jealous of people who are that fanatical, not fanatical, but just like there's an enthusiasm that comes with it.
Well, I'll make that distinction. Like, okay, like fanatic implies I don't understand why I'm doing it. And that's like, yeah, not the what
Prabhupada said ungrounded faith.
Ungrounded faith. Whereas enthusiasm, 100% enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is endeavor executed with intelligence. And that's why I feel very fortunate in this process given to us by Srila Prabhupada, this ancient eternal process, that there's full knowledge. If there's something I'm not understanding, well, we can practice more, study more, and we get understanding. So I believe I hear what you're saying, that if there's a part of you that like to be more like enthusiastic, committed, not necessarily the fanaticism of 12 years ago, but a true enthusiasm where with intelligence is fully engaged. It's not blind following. With full enthusiasm, we're giving ourselves heart and soul to living purposefully, to following this science. Thanks for your sharing, Bhakti Lakshmi. Enthusiasm equals endeavor with intelligence. Thank you all for your presence and participation. Okay, yes.
Take one more.
Yeah, one more.
It's just about old age.
Old age.
Yesterday I was in front of the deities, and I was in the front of my altar, and I was thinking about like that determination you were speaking. There's like determination to really increase spiritual experience, absorption. And I was looking at that, and I was thinking, okay, we have a psychophysical nature, and there is a body, and the body does exist.
Yes.
Our identification with body is illusory.
Yeah.
The body existence is the body existence.
Yeah.
I'm crazy, I haven't seen a leg. There is a leg. Yeah. And so I was thinking like, I was looking at this vehicle, this body, mind, my intelligence, all that. They have a lot of limitation.
Yeah.
Tons of limitation. And that determination we are speaking about, okay, it can be there, and I can increase external practice. Like there's a lot of things that are in my power. But it seems also that there's a lot of things that's not in my power. And the other day after, when was that? Saturday morning, this Ganesha, we were speaking, and Ganesha gave a thing that we are trying to move this body to be pure. But this body is not going to be pure or self-realized or illuminated. And so where is what I wanted to say is, where is it? What do we do with those limitations? Where I can really see that, okay, I believe I'm sincere, I believe I'm praying, I believe I'm following all that, and I still see conditioning from this vehicle that come back and come back and come back, which is conditioning. And it doesn't seem that conditioning is going to transform necessarily. Like I have brown eyes, They're not going to transform. You know, there's things that are not going to transform. And at the same time, from my point of view, it looks like it's in the way of my spiritual life. So I want to understand that sense of limitation, and on the other hand, that determination that you were speaking about earlier, determine like to just move forward with spiritual emancipation and complete absorption in service to go and Krishna.
Yeah. I think I understood the conditioning question. What's the determination question?
Well, like I can have determination.
Yeah.
But the two may not be compatible.
Oh, the term with the conditioning. Oh, thank you, Melanie, for these thoughtful questions. I mean, sometimes Prabhupada uses the imagery, the term of like, okay, a bicycle goes as fast as a bicycle can go. I don't know, 30 miles an hour, would probably say, but okay. But if the bicycle rider latches on to a motor vehicle, it might be going 80 miles an hour, then even in the sense of the bicycle has these limitations, but it's transcending those limitations. So yeah, like on our own at the same time, we get to by determination and grace to connect with Prabhupada, connect with Krishna, and then we can go a lot faster.
Even if our limitation gets in the way of that connection.
They're not limited by our limitations, right? These transcendental personalities are not. They can use us for.
They are not, but I am, and my ability to connect with them is, at least from one point of view.
Yeah, and that's something as we purify, we can transform that. And so, like, okay, like the color of our eyes, that's not a limitation. And that's something like, okay, these eyes, this leg, these talents, these qualities, this mind, let me use it in Krishna service. Tesam satata yuktanam bhajatam pridipurvakam tadami buddhiyogam tam yena mamu priyanti te. As we get sincere, then Krishna gives us the intelligence how to engage everything, even our conditioning, in his service. And so these conditioning, chant Hare Krishna, and just the conditioning at the deep root, it just gets burned to ashes. Now, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's easy. It is simple though. So as deep as you want to go, the subtle conditioning that I so deeply identify with it. Basic Bhagavad Gita, that by engaging in bhakti yoga, it gets burned to the root. It gets flooded out, whatever imagery we want to use. So I'm answering philosophically. I'm not saying like I'm there, but this process, as deep as our conditioning is and our insincerity, this process is like trillions of times more powerful. So that's important to remember. And so we connect with the process, Bhagavatam, chanting Hare Krishna, hearing Prabhupada lecture, offering a flower to Prabhupada. We connect with the process, and that's much more powerful than as deep as our conditioning.
And working progress.
Both.
Everyone, excuse me.
Okay, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
There's different things.
Hare Krishna, everybody. We'll end the class now. We can say Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai.
Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai.
Jai.
The Prabhupada Ki Jai.
If you'd like to, please stay online. We're going to present a gift. Someone's unmuted. So, dear Govinda.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, dear Govinda Prabhu. So, some of us, I don't know, I'll come to the meeting for a minute. some of us have been brainstorming for like a year and a half about today, giving you a gift. There's like a lot of email brainstorming about what gift to give you. And so we had a lot of ideas. Maybe we'll just use each of them for the rest of the year. I don't know, but at least where we landed on is what we're about to experience.
Uh-oh.
Stretch day.
Yes, your stretch is to receive right now. Receive our sharing. So we are going to show you something. We're going to press play on YouTube. We're going to share the screen. Everyone can see here in this room and online. We're going to show you something that we created. COVID-19 happened, and so some of the ideas, like most of the ideas, didn't work or didn't feel feasible. So this is where we landed, considering the year, and it's really great. So I'm excited to share. And I think it's time. So maybe we can. I'll move the screen here. We can all view over here. Yes. So maybe you, dear women, if you please move over on. Hey, so everyone in the room can see.
Krishna, Krishna. Hi.
Hare
What are you
Krishna. What's happening? You ready to receive?
Yeah, do I sit or stand?
You can just sit.
Sit.
Everyone can sit or stand as they wish, so they can see.
Hare Krishna. I'm so inspired. So inspired by all these stretches.
Yeah.
I am.
Anything else you're experiencing? It's my coaching skills.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. It's rare, but I'm speechless.
Okay, everyone now.
I'm very enthused and inspired, like I'm solidly feeling like the world's becoming a better place from these commitments. Like really, that's what I get. So such inspiring commitments, such inspiring commitments, and yeah, truly thank you. Yeah, this is, really makes me happy to hear your commitments, your determination. And Andam Buddhi Vardhanam, the nature of the soul is to grow and to expand. Yeah, so, you know, I'm very excited about what I just viewed and heard. And thank you all for your presence, for your affection. I feel your affection. You too. Thank you all. Hare Krishna.
Comment. Oh, there's like all these chats here. We have to read them before we hang up.
Krishna, Krishna.
Let's see.
Yeah. Such inspiring Sangha.
That's not everything.
Happy
We started a
birthday.
feast all together.
Again.
And
Lots of happy birthdays.
And I can put together.